So, I just finished watching Elemental, and it was absolutely terrible. The writing's bad. None of the payoffs really worked. The first act is just incredibly bad. They like fly through the entire setup, real poor. The romantic parts of the movie is really underbaked, but it's like the majority of the movie, so it's just a bunch of boring, broad strokes rom com stuff. And like the major part of the like theme, the major meat of the movie like comes out of nowhere halfway through the film. It's just really bad. The world is cool to look at, but there's not much thought behind like why this story needs to be told in this world. And honestly, like the world doesn't make too much sense anyways. There is one line at the very end of the movie that I absolutely love. Personal bias line. But overall, really just like dislike the movie. It's like Zootopia, like a movie I really enjoy, but like exponentially worse in every single way. And yeah, but honestly, I didn't like mind the movie being that bad. Like, there's a lot of movies that are bad out right now, and technically and creatively, like, it didn't do anything too crazy or out of the box that's like worth mentioning. That like makes me like this movie a whole lot less than other ones. Um, but my problem is how it's like yet another Disney movie about minority generational trauma, and it doesn't do like any of it well. Like in the last few years, we've had like Turning Red, Encanto, Coco, Strange World, even maybe like Moana, like movies like that, and I think it fails on maybe like three main aspects. Like the first one, I think it coasts on the experience of its target audience, um, and that's really annoying to me. Like I'm in like the 1.5 or second generation of immigrants. Depends on how you look at it, but basically I'm like close enough to have like understood and experienced consequences of immigration and the hardships of that, but also far away removed to not be like blinded by that experience because it wasn't me who like physically immigrated. Um, and because of that, I'd argue that Elemental like doesn't actually portray like immigration experience well. It just paints a good enough, broad enough picture that the difficult immigration experience is like recognizable to immigrants, and like audiences will like project and fill in gaps in their own minds and be like, oh my gosh, yes, that like spoke to me so well. But really, it's just like broad strokes, and I think it knows that, and like it doesn't put enough work in for us to care about the immigration story. If you haven't really experienced it yourself, and like I understand what the movie's going for, but it's executed poorly, and there's not enough time or nuance like spent in that first act making you feel for the fire people. Um, so that's something that annoys me, and that feels like many Asian American like inspired movies do. And there's another thing of like how it doesn't add anything new. Like there's the immigration story, but Encanto did that better. Like they had visual, visceral flashbacks of like people attacking them and pushing them out of their land. Here in Elemental, like there's no good reason for them to leave. Like there was a storm, and their house was the only one that was broken, and so they had to like leave because there was no other way. But like all of your people and homies are there. Like you can like move into someone else's house for like a few months while you rebuild yours, and like it's not like their entire livelihood was like there was no good reason for that. And just the immigration story as a whole, like the entirety of immigration struggle was just like a 2 minute montage in the beginning of them like not being able to find a place to rent. Um, and then there's also like the idea of like the main character not wanting to follow in her parents' footsteps. And I think Turning Red, a movie that I really don't like, does it a lot better. Because we actually see May experiencing new things and forming her interests over time, and we get to see how like, that reacts with like her loyalty to her mother. But here in Ember's like case, she just realizes that she doesn't want to take up her father's shop, like only because she says she does, and there's no real indication leading up to there like that was a thing. It seemed like oh like she does, and um, yeah, and like the father finally accepts progress and agrees with the daughter, like that whole trope and idea. Like I think Moana does it better because Moana actually fixes the problem and returns the heart to make like conditions safe to voyage. So like it makes sense that now they can voyage again. But in Elemental, like the father just feels bad that like Wade died, so he's like, okay, it's fine. Like you can marry my daughter. Like it just doesn't make sense there. And I know like this movie is crafted out of love and experience and personal stories from a lot of people and a lot of immigrants. But just because you have the experience on your side doesn't mean it makes it like a well written, well structured, well delivered story. And I think they just retreaded a lot of ground from a lot of previous movies and didn't do them particularly well or add anything new to like the conversation of generational trauma or immigration or anything like that. And yeah, so that was kind of annoying. And I think the biggest part about this movie that I didn't like is it's been a trend in so many Hollywood movies and Disney movies is it always takes the Western side. The younger generation always wins. The younger generation's desires are always proven to be the right choice. That's the happy ending. That's the good thing to believe. That's the right choice to choose. And I would love to see a movie like where the older generation, like quote unquote, wins or is validated. Like, Elemental almost brings up a really interesting dilemma at the end of the movie at Bernie's retirement party. Basically, Wade comes in to profess his love for Ember, and he claims that like she loves him too. And at this point, like we, the audience, knows, and Ember also knows, like that she loves Wade, and her mom knows it too because like she can smell it on them or like whatever. But she also believes that she wants to give back to her parents for their sacrifice, for like their sacrifice in immigrating and working hard to build the life that she has now. And it's an interesting dilemma of like you love both Wade and your parents, and like she wants to be with Wade but also like honor her parents, and like there's probably a version of this movie where she loves Wade but like loves her family more and chooses family obligation over romantic desire, like and that like seems to go against every American ideal, but like I think there's a version of this that can present like both as free will choices, and I think it's okay if Ember chooses the family obligation. Like I feel like in this movie it's set up like, oh, like you are not allowed to follow in your father's footsteps, even if like you, or maybe like the only reason you'd follow in your father's footsteps are because you want to fulfill this family obligation or sacrifice, giving back. But I think that is okay to choose. Obviously, it's okay to choose the other side, right? It is okay to choose the romantic desire. It's okay if Ember chooses the individual desire. But the problem is every Hollywood movie ends in that way. And it's okay to not always choose something that's based on your individual desire, which is something I think a lot of American audiences don't understand. And that's part of where the Eastern culture kind of comes in and, challenges some things, right? And of course, it makes sense. Like, these are all Hollywood movies that I've been talking about, like Coco and Encanto, Moana, Turning Red. They're all made by American studios. But I think it does do damage. Like, it continues to fuel the echo chamber that Western culture is so much better than Eastern culture. Like, specifically, American culture is better than East Asian culture. And that's, like, harmful for, like, specifically people like me. I've dealt with a jumble of internal racism, like hating my own people, hating my own culture, and, like, praise God that he's helped me work through a lot of that. But I know that there's so many second gen or first gen Asian Americans that can relate, and like they haven't fully untangled all of that. And yes, there's like a lot of ways where older Asian generations are stuck in their ways and they like should change and they should grow. But there's also a lot of value in family and in sacrifice and in community, and in those values that I think America like could really learn from, and Asian Americans can really hold on to and like should learn to cherish. And I think that movies like this and like the string of movies that all say the same thing against East Asian culture, that's harmful. And I'm still personally myself trying to figure out how to cherish and hold on to like the good things of American and Asian culture. And I just think Elemental doesn't do a great job of that, which kind of frustrates me because I think with Jesus, I've been made like new in my identity in him, but like so many people, they don't have that. And like this identity struggle and just battle is not made easier or clearer with these movies. So come on, Disney, do better.